April 14, 1912. 11:40 p.m. In the middle of the North Atlantic, a ship the world believed was among the safest ever built brushes against an iceberg. There is no massive explosion. No immediate panic. For most of the 2,224 people on board, nothing even seems wrong at first. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, the RMS Titanic disappears beneath the Atlantic. So what really happened? Not the movie version, but the real engineering, the real decisions, and the chain of mistakes that turned an iceberg collision into one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. Why the Titanic sank? The ship. To understand why Titanic sank, you first need to understand how she was built. At 882 feet long and weighing more than 46,000 tons, Titanic was the largest passenger ship in the world when she entered service. She was built by Harland and Wolff in Belfast for the White Star Line and represented the height of early 20th century engineering. One of her most celebrated features was a system of 16 watertight compartments. Massive doors could be closed from the bridge within seconds, limiting flooding if the hull was damaged. This design led many people to believe the ship was practically unsinkable. The designers believed Titanic could remain afloat even if any 4 of the forward compartments flooded. The collision with the iceberg would open the first 6 compartments to the sea. The warnings. The most surprising part of the story is that the crew had plenty of warning. Throughout April 14, several nearby ships reported sea ice and icebergs directly along Titanic's route. Many of these warnings reached the bridge. Others never received the attention they deserved. Late that evening, the nearby ship Californian attempted to report that it had stopped because of heavy ice. Titanic's wireless operator, Jack Phillips, was busy sending a backlog of passenger messages to shore and interrupted the transmission. The warning was never fully processed on the bridge. Despite the growing number of ice reports, Titanic continued at around 22 knots, close to her normal cruising speed. The sea was unusually calm, there was no moon, and the still water made icebergs much harder to spot. The collision. At 11:39 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet noticed a dark shape directly ahead. He struck the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge. Iceberg, right ahead. First Officer William Murdoch immediately ordered the ship to turn. Some historians also believe he may have attempted to slow or reverse the engines, although the exact sequence of commands remains uncertain because none of the senior bridge officers survived. The iceberg was missed by only a matter of seconds. Instead of a direct impact, it scraped along the starboard side below the waterline. The collision buckled steel plates and open seams held together by thousands of rivets, allowing water to enter multiple compartments. Ironically, many naval historians believe a direct head-on collision might have limited the flooding to fewer compartments and given the ship a better chance of remaining afloat. But no one can know for certain. The design limitation. The real problem wasn't simply the hole in the hull. It was how the ship was designed. Although Titanic's compartments were separated by watertight bulkheads, those bulkheads did not extend all the way to the upper decks. As the forward compartments filled with water, the bow slowly sank lower. Eventually, water spilled over the tops of the bulkheads into the next compartment, much like water overflowing from one section of an ice cube tray into another. Once the flooding spread beyond 4 compartments, the ship's fate became a matter of physics. Some researchers have also argued that parts of Titanic's steel and some of her wrought iron rivets were less resilient in freezing temperatures than modern materials. How much this contributed to the disaster remains debated, but it continues to be studied by historians and engineers. The lifeboats. Even after the collision, the disaster did not have to claim so many lives. Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats. Together, they could hold about 1,178 people. More than 2,200 passengers and crew were on board. Surprisingly, this met, and even exceeded, the outdated British maritime regulations of the time, which based lifeboat requirements on a ship's tonnage rather than the number of people aboard. The regulations had simply failed to keep pace with the size of modern passenger ships. The situation became even worse because many lifeboats left only partially filled. Some crew members feared that fully loaded boats might overload the davits. Others struggled with confusion and poor communication during the evacuation. As a result, several boats carrying room for 65 people departed with only 20 to 40 aboard. The final hours. For nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes, Titanic's officers and crew fought a losing battle. Distress rockets lit up the night sky. Wireless operators continued sending increasingly desperate calls for help. The Californian remained nearby, but her wireless operator had gone to bed, and the ship never came to Titanic's rescue. Farther away, the Carpathia received the distress calls and immediately turned toward Titanic, racing through the same dangerous ice field. But she was more than 58 miles away. She simply could not arrive in time. At 2:20 a.m., as the stern rose high above the water, the enormous stresses placed on the hull caused Titanic to break apart before disappearing beneath the Atlantic. Around 1,500 people lost their lives. Most did not drown. They died from hypothermia in water only a few degrees above its freezing point. The real answer. So why did Titanic really sink? There wasn't one single cause. It was a chain of failures. An iceberg collision that opened 6 compartments. A design that could not prevent flooding from spreading beyond its watertight bulkheads. Ice warnings that were not always acted upon effectively. A speed that many historians believe was too high for the conditions. Outdated lifeboat regulations. And an evacuation filled with confusion. Any one of these problems alone might not have doomed the ship. Together, they created a disaster that became almost impossible to stop. Titanic did not sink because of a curse. She did not sink because fate demanded it. She sank because of a series of human decisions, engineering limitations, and unfortunate circumstances that aligned on one cold April night. More than a century later, those lessons continue to shape how ships are designed, regulated, and operated around the world.